On Daf 135 of Shabbat, we're dealing with this interesting question about Brit Milah, circumcision, when it can happen on Shabbat, when it cannot happen on Shabbat. And this interesting question is brought up about, well, what did the forefathers do? Because this one person wants to learn a verse about how only a natural birth would bring a Brit Milah on the 8th day on Shabbat. And they look because the verse in the Torah has Brit Milah, has circumcision together with this idea of the natural birth. And so it's questioned, well, what did the forefathers do? Because Abraham was commanded to circumcise his children on the 8th day. That's something that is ancient, well before the giving of the Torah. But the verse being cited only was in the Torah. It was at the giving of the Torah. So what did they do before? How did we understand that? How did they understand their context and their historical perspective and anomalies? And it's one of these things we have to really work to be understanding. In fact, we see a lot going on these days. We're trying to rewrite history and tear up old history and tear down old statues and all of these things. And it's so important that we're able to understand history in its context. We're able to understand events as not as we are looking at them now with our views and looking back, but as they were back then, and try to understand the worlds that people lived in. And we see with this whole idea of Brit Milah with circumcision that the connection they wanted to make just didn't fit into that world, into the world of the forefathers. In fact, part of my whole mission in writing the Age of Prophecy series was to try to bring that world, the Bible, to life. And the world I was looking at was post the giving of the Torah. But this is specifically going back even further before the giving of the Torah. At the time of Abraham, what was their historical context like? When they were given this commandment of circumcision, what came with it? What did not come with it? What was all the things that went together? And we see it's very difficult to take things completely out of their historical context and to read them into a totally different time. At the time of the Gemara, what is that, like 1,500, 2,000 years later? It's hard to understand exactly the same parameters and exactly the same understanding of how the law should be applied at that point.